It is 6 o'clock and you are in focus. Listen, if you picture a summer in Maryland, you might think of boating, steamed crabs, and by the bay, of course, eating and shucking oysters. How about that? But how much do we really know about what's happening to the Chesapeake? In Focus investigator Amy Aubert hopped aboard a barge and got a behind-the-scenes look at a multi-million-dollar project, and it's making big changes underwater.
Jamie, we got to see what exactly goes into a $30 million oyster restoration project. It's what you can't see, what's going on underwater, that has a story all its own. From far away, it doesn't look like much. But if you take a closer look, even just below the surface, you'll notice a much different story. Barges anchored in Harris Creek are a part of a years-long project to make a change in the Chesapeake, one oyster, one habitat at a time. For Angie Sowers, this is another day at the office. She's part of the Baltimore division of the Army Corps of Engineers and has focused on the Harris Creek oyster restoration project for years.
Oysters in the Chesapeake are at very low levels, and we have to not only put oysters back, but also their habitat is lost.
Calling it low levels might be putting it lightly. The group says bay-wide oyster numbers are at 1% of what they used to be.
The history here is that there was heavy harvest in the early 1900s, and then starting in the 60s, you start to get poor water quality, and then in the 80s, diseases came in, and so all those factors compounded to really hit the oysters really hard.
It's not just the oysters that vanished.
As we've lost habitat, we've lost some of the connectivity and the pieces of the food chain, and so the bay is really functioning differently now.
Sowers calls oysters the keystone species in the bay, and bringing them back would mean bringing relief to our waterways.
Oysters provide a host of ecosystem services and a host of benefits. They improve water quality. The reef habitat is habitat and homes for little fish and crabs and a whole variety of species that are really the bottom of the food chain.
Planning started in 2010, and this time, federal, state, and some nonprofit watershed groups teamed up to get it done.
Historically, the oyster reef restoration that we've done has been 2 or 3 or maybe 5 acres at a time. This is going to be over 250 acres just in this relatively small creek that's just a few miles wide and a few miles long.
Stephanie Westby works with the NOAA Restoration Center. One of their main roles in the project, using sonar maps to figure out where existing reefs are, what's left, and potential sites where they could build up new habitats.
A big reef like this, you wouldn't want to build this on soft, muddy bay bottom. It'll just sink under its own weight. So what we're looking for are the relic reefs, the remains of the old reefs that used to be big and thriving.
It's these locations they're helping to rebuild and encourage new life in the shells.
These are the oyster hatcheries. So this baby oysters called spat set on an oyster shell at the hatchery, and then we place them in the water, and then you'll see as they grow, they produce these clumps.
A blueprint maps out their work, each load leaving the barge dropped meticulously to the bay floor below.
It's important to provide this reef habitat that the oysters will set on so that they're up out of the muckiest bottom.
Workers say the areas where much of the rock and shell are landing have fewer than 1 oyster per square meter. Numbers they're trying to change.
If you think of a 3-foot square block and think of one only oyster sitting in there, our goal is to have 50 oysters per square meter.
So far, they're going well beyond their own initial plans.
In the first few years, we've actually seen twice the survival that we were expecting on these oyster reefs.
An estimated $30 million project, a devoted team and years of hard work, hoping to bring healthy changes to the bay through oyster restoration.
Within these tributaries and locally, they'll provide water quality benefits. They will provide habitat for other species, and that's the 2 big targets that we're going for.
The teams are in contact with local groups and the recreational boating community, making sure this new growth doesn't interfere with certain areas. And while so far they're surpassing their own goals set, it's just the beginning.
To us as biologists, you have to make some predictions for the sake of planting, and to see a doubling of initial survival was very exciting.
There's a much larger picture to this project than just what we saw out on the barges on Harris Creek. The location we visited is the first to undergo huge efforts for large-scale oyster restoration. It's a part of an executive order and Chesapeake Bay agreement goals. The overall goals include restoring 10 tributaries by 2025, 5 here in Maryland and 5 in Virginia. For more information on the projects and their effects on the Chesapeake, head over to our website at abc2news.com/infocus.